Yesterday, I talked about when you're trying to answer a question, you need to look for specific details that actually answer that question. And if you want to use those details to answer the question, you have to be able to explain or articulate, there's your fancy word for the day, explain or articulate how those details answer the question. If you can't make a connection from your detail to the question, then you may not have the right detail. If you can't make the connection, your reader or the person who's looking at your work may not understand why you chose that detail, even though that detail might be pretty good. So you guys worked on it a little bit yesterday, and you guys kind of struggled with it yesterday, which is cool because struggling is kind of part of learning. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at a few of those details that you guys found and kind of examine what works and what doesn't work. And take a look at this detail first. So the first thing is when it says detail, that means it's asking what does it actually say in the text. So if I were to go back and read the text, it would say the whalers cut up and boiled the whale's blubber or fat to get oil, which was used in lamps. So there is kind of a summary of the text, but the detail from the text is not quoted, or at least not quoted directly. Okay, and then the explanation part is supposed to be explaining how the detail answers the question. Now here they have the whales help them because they use the whale's fat to make oil. So they've kind of summed up the detail, so they have the right idea. They use the oils in lamps and to cook food. Well, they wouldn't use whale oil to cook food, and it doesn't say that in the text. So I wouldn't necessarily be writing that unless I was sure. And the other thing is the explanation part is supposed to explain how it answers the question. And if we go up here, the question was, how is New England's ocean important to their economy? So telling me they use oils and lamps and to cook food is not necessarily telling me how the oceans helped them do this and how that's important to their economy. If we were looking more to explain that, we might say something like the fact that they were able to sail out on the ocean and use the blubber to make oil that they then could sell. Or you could say, you know, the oil was something that they could sell to make money, or that this was one of the industries that New England was able to create because of their oceans. So you could say because of their oceans, they were able to get whale blubber and sell oil. So that could be a way of connecting it to the question. Hunt whales and sell oil. So let's call it whale oil just so that we're okay. Now the explanation part is where you get to put it into your own words, okay? So right there it's okay to sum up, but sum up what you know. Don't sum up information that's not in the text that you don't know, okay? Stick with what you know and what you can prove. All right, and you'll notice that it took me a couple times to figure out how to explain it too. It's not gonna like automatically pop into your head. Like try something, and if you write it down, you're like, that really doesn't connect to the question. How could I fix that? Let's take a look at another one. Now this one over here kind of almost has the explanation and the detail flip-flopped. Like if you look here, this is a great kind of what it says in the text, but that should be on the detail side. So it's not a big thing, but that's the detail from the text. But then you need the explanation. So like where it says the fish and the whales, yes, those are the things that they're using to make money, but you know, in your own words, and sometimes you might feel like you're repeating yourself. And for this exercise, it's okay, because what we're doing right now is we're really just thinking about how it answers the question. If we were writing down an essay and it was obvious how it answered the question, we don't always necessarily really have to spend a lot of time explaining it. But for our purposes, I want to make sure you understand how it answers the question. So we do want to make sure we explain it. So right here, we would say that the colonists were able, so if I were to have to explain this detail here, I would say something like the colonists were able to go out on the oceans and fish and sell those fish to make money. Okay, so I have the detail that says it, and then I'm able to explain how the detail answers the question. And I always want to make sure I can connect the detail back to the question. So if the question's about how the oceans help them make money, I want to make sure I can make that connection between the detail and the question. They're able to go out in the oceans and fish and use that fish to make money. There is my direct connection. And then we've already kind of talked about the whales, okay? They were able to go out into the oceans, hunt for the whales, and sell the whale oil for money. That makes a correct connection, again, between the whales, the ocean, and the money. So the ocean and the economy and the resource, which in this case, the natural resource is the whales. Okay, this one we're going to look at quickly. So again, over here, the detail, I want to see what the text actually says. So this person summarized that the government was picky on what the colonists could buy. And that's not true. It is true, but it's not necessarily answering our question, and it's kind of a summary of what it says in the text. So if I were going to look at the text, it says the government said the colonists could only send their exports or goods leaving a country to England or other English colonies. And the government also said that the colonists could only buy English-made imports or goods brought into a country. So that is kind of a lot to write down for detail, so I can totally understand why you summarized it. But there's kind of other ways to cut it down shorter and still quote what it says in the text. Like you could just take in one part of one sentence, one part of another sentence. The government said the colonists could only send their exports to England and could only buy English-made imports. So you could use part of a sentence as long as you're quoting it accurately instead of having to copy that whole paragraph. Okay, so and then go over here when we get to the explanation. Remember, we're supposed to explain how this shows the ocean is helping them make money. So restating the same thing is not necessarily giving me an explanation, because right here, the government said colonists could only buy English-made imports. It's true, but it doesn't help show me how that helped the English make money on the oceans or help the colonists make money on the oceans. So the connection is not there. It's a good detail, it's an important detail, but the connection was not made to help me understand how that detail is answering the question. It was just kind of restating the detail again in their own words. So New England whalers hunted along the coast, okay? I believe that is a detail from the text. And then this just goes on to explain more what they did with the whales. But again, when you're explaining the detail, you need to explain how it answers the question. So again, we've already explained a couple times how that whale blubber one answers the question. They were able to go out on the oceans, hunt the whales, and sell the whale oil for money. And money is part of their economy. So we need to make sure that we're not just restating the detail when we're explaining it, okay? Sometimes it's going to sound really close if the detail already explains itself, but we do need to make sure that our explanation is not just us saying something, but it's saying how that detail is connected to the question, how it answers the question. So many whalers hunted close to shore. That's not really, it's an interesting detail, but it doesn't answer the question about how they're making money. Nothing in there is telling me about how they're using the oceans to make money other than the fact that they're hunting on the oceans. But that part alone is not really the detail that I need, okay? And then sailing for months and sometimes even years, that's just another detail from the text. It's still not, it's not connected to the question. It's not explaining how it answers the question or how oceans help them make money. Last one. Okay, here's the last one we're going to look at today. This one's actually pretty good in the fact that the detail might not seem like it connects to the question, but they were able to explain it in a way that made it connect to the question. So if you can explain how your detail connects to the question, you can use it, which goes back to what we said yesterday. Two different people can have two different details, but if they can both explain how they connect to the question, they can both be right. So if we look here, the government had strict rules for trade. Okay, well, what does that have to do with New Englanders making money off the ocean? Well, let's see if they were able to explain it. In the explanation, I'm going to highlight it here, it says the English used the water for trading to make money, and they could only sell it to other English. So they're trading on the ocean, and the trade is making them money. So they have made a connection back to the question, and since they were able to connect it back to the question, that is an acceptable detail in order to answer it. Okay, so let's look at the next one. The fishers made a living by catching fish such as cod, herring, and mackerel, so that comes from the story. And then over here, the fishers use the water by fishing and making money. So they're making money from the fish, and they're using the water to help them make that money. So they've kind of restated and explained the detail to make sure we understand. All right, now New England whalers hunted along the coast. The whalers used the water by killing whales and selling them and making money. So yes, So what this person did with each detail is they connected the detail back to the question, which was how they use the oceans to make money. So the only extra thing that maybe could have done was said, instead of saying water, you could have said oceans. That way it directly connected back to the question. But, this is a pretty good job. It's doing what I asked. It's finding a detail and explaining how that detail answers the question. And you'll notice it doesn't have to be super complicated all the time. And as we get better with it, we'll get more sophisticated. So I hope that helps you understand what I was having you do yesterday.